like Monty would bring up Danton Heinen and say, Dan, we've got some news for you. And like Sweeney walks in with one of those fat like checks they give to like donate to people with it, like 1 year,
Like
850,000, and the place just goes nuts.
Publishers Clearinghouse. Yeah, they just have like the gigantic check.
Yeah, they should do it. And welcome into the Bruins Beat on CLNS Media. My name is Evan Marinofsky, and today we are joined by Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. It's always weird when we record podcasts at the beginning of the week, but we don't at the end. It's like we haven't talked in so long. There's so much to catch up on, and there's a lot of Bruins stuff we're going to get to, but we have to start here first. I imagine most have heard or seen the news story about Adam Johnson from this past weekend. The former NHL player, the former standout at Minnesota Duluth, who was playing over in England, who had his skate cut his throat during a game on Saturday, and he died Sunday morning. Just incredibly sad. And we want to send our best, our condolences to the Johnson family, to everybody affected by this tragedy. I mean, it is as horrible as it gets, worst case scenario possible. And we want to send our best, because I think the hockey world is in mourning right now. Because as I said, this is worst case scenario. It's everybody's worst nightmare. And, again, we send our best. I want to touch on neck guards really quickly, because neck guards growing up, Conor, I'm curious if you had the same kind of experience growing up. It was always, neck guards were kind of looked down upon. They were annoying. They'd crinkle up on your neck. They'd take sweat, and no one wanted to wear them ever. And when things like this happen, which they don't happen all the time, but when they do, it is worst case scenario. And before we came on to record, the English Ice Hockey Association has made it mandatory for all players during on-ice activities starting December 31st to wear neck guards. They highly encourage them until then. The reason they're not mandatory now is just because of supply issues, which I already looked on Amazon. I looked through everyone's buying them. And you saw on Sunday, 3 Providence Bruins, including Fabian Lysell, wore neck protection. I think the debate people are going to have is, should they be mandated in the NHL? And, you can have that debate. I think NHL players should wear them. Whether or not you want to make a rule out of it, it's up to them. But it's good for their own safety. But I think the biggest impact NHL players would have wearing neck guards is it would impact the youth levels, right? In the NHL, you have EMTs on standby, you have doctors. I remember the Richard Zednik incident. I think it was like 2007 or 2008. There was a trainer right there. There were EMTs. There's doctors there. At Might, Squirt, Pee Wee, Bantam high school games, that's not the case. And that stuff can happen. Again, it's not all the time, but this stuff can happen. And when it does, you want protection against it. So I think it would say a lot if NHL players began wearing them. And I mean, just horrible. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on this, or, just terrible.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's tragic, and it's, something that we all love, the game of hockey, and it's just awful when these kind of freak accidents like that happen. And we literally saw it, what was it, last year in Connecticut. These things do happen where people lose their life in these circumstances. And yeah, it's tough. And it would be curious to see what the NHL does moving forward. Jim Montgomery talked about it today and said it was kind of more of a personal preference because of the players themselves don't like wearing them, because kind of the aforementioned reasons why you said uncomfortable. They move up and down, which sometimes doesn't even fully protect from what can happen on some of those really critical injuries. But again, like to your point, if you see more players adopt it, use it, again, it's all about, I think, setting an example that, I think that's why people were looking at that Providence game with guys like Schoen. It's like, all right, if these guys are doing it, maybe you'll see it more from other guys in the AHL. If you see more NHL players who want to take that next step, starting tonight or what have you, like, it catches on. I think it's most importantly for as you said, the lower levels too, of setting an example for them. Because as you said, they don't have the same medical care when you have something as traumatic as that could happen in any rink across the world. So, be very curious to see how NHL, both the league and the players, especially who seem to have the ball's in their court, how they approach it. But whatever discourse you want to have over it in terms of net guards and the best approach, it's awful. Like it's just an awful situation out of all of it. And echoing what you said, our thoughts go out to Adam and his whole family and everyone impacted by it. It's just no other way you can really kind of sum it up there. It's just awful.
It's just tragic, and it's horrible. And I wish we weren't having this conversation. And so, I mean, it's horrible and the most heartbreaking thing in the world, because we love this game and we live and breathe it. And to have a freak accident like this happen is just terrible. And so there's just not much else to say about it. And again, we'll see what the league does with net guards, but as you said, it's big. I think it's biggest for the lower levels, the kids, because they don't have the EMTs, the doctors on hand that could potentially save lives. I mean, in a lot of situations, like in high school, you hope that an assistant coach is a firefighter or something. I know there was an incident in Framingham years ago that a kid got cut by a skate, I forget where, in practice, and basically his life was saved by an assistant coach who was a firefighter. Like that's why he's living. So it's chance. So I think there has to be a change on how net guards are viewed because of this. And I think there will be. I mean, the fact that you saw 3 AHL players already wearing them on Sunday kind of says it all. But yes, again, thoughts to the Johnson family, everybody affected by this horrible, horrible tragedy. So moving right along to the Bruins stuff. Bruins are 7-0-1, Connor. Bruins are 7-0-1, and they got a big win on Saturday night against their, you could argue, a real opponent. They're not a real opponent, but an opponent that looks pretty damn good in the Detroit Red Wings, getting a 4-1 win. And I must ask the question, Connor, because we discussed this a lot in the offseason, and 8 games in, solid sample size. Are the Bruins a cup contender? Where are you at on this?
I mean, I'm still going to put them squarely in the mix. And I think that's kind of, if you're a Bruins fan, you'll probably just take that, because I think probably a lot of Bruins fans are terrified of being the front runners or being.
They don't want to get their hope. They don't want to get those hopes up.
Yeah. Because again, I think you can't overlook the start they've had, even if you want to look at the level of competition, what have you. They really, for most of that game on Saturday against Detroit, really shut down a team that was flying high, especially on offense, on the power play. Didn't give them a whole lot. If they play games like that, they're going to snuff out whoever it is, the Maple Leafs, the Oilers, any high octane offense is going to have trouble if they play as stingy as they were in that game on Saturday. Listen, I think there's a lot to like with what you've seen from them so far. Again, the bedrock of their success is going to be their goaltending and defense, which really shouldn't have a lot of variance, shouldn't have a lot of up and down play. Like, you've got a foundation of, at the very least, you're going to be, I think, we mentioned before, I don't think this is a wild card team. I think this is a team that, barring injuries, has the personnel and structure in place to be a team that can punch its ticket to the playoffs before the last week or two of the season. How the offense comes around, how things mesh there, how things gel is going to be, I think, what elevates them into being a team that has the means to be a proven cup contender. And I think you see it in spurts with, having a guy like David Pastrnak helps out quite a bit. I think he's assisted on half of their goals this year. Not really sustainable, but it helps when you have a guy like that can, carry the scoring burden there. But whether it's finding out more chemistry around the rest of the forward core, getting Jake DeBrusk going, Matthew Poitras can continue to stick with the big club and continue to drive play. Like, if we see more of those things happen, if we see Poitras continue to play well, Coyle getting more traction in the third line, DeBrusk heating up, then you see things start falling into place, and I think you can view them as a premier cup contender right now. I think they're right on the cusp of it. I think I'm feeling pretty good, Evan, about where we were, about them being second in the Atlantic or second, third, what have you. But need to see a little bit more cohesion from that forward core before we start, elevating them into the discussion of being the team to beat, which again, I don't know if Bruins fans want to even be that.
No, why would you want that right now? They are a cup contender on the back end. Defensively, in net, like that's how they beat the Red Wings. That's how they're going to beat the better teams. That's how you're going to compete with Carolina, Colorado, Toronto. That's how you're going to compete with those teams because you don't have the offensive firepower. You are not up front. You are not yet a cup contender. And that's why I think they are not cup contenders in general. You do have to have both, in my eyes, to be a true cup contender, to be a team that is favored. Now, what's interesting is on FanDuel, Bruins right now are 8th for the cup. I think their odds are like plus 1,100. I know they're 8th in all, which I think is sort of accurate. That's kind of where I'd place them. It's a little high, but I'd still have them around there, somewhere in that 8 to 12 range. That's where I would have them in odds. By the way, speaking of FanDuel, sometimes I look through the YouTube comments on these podcasts, and sometimes they get me down. Might be some bad ones. There's one the other day that made me smile. Said, you and I are having a FanDuel constantly because of the fans above our heads. And I said, that is fucking genius. So credit to whoever commented that, because I wish every comment was as witty as that was. That was good.
Also, respectfully, we have a podcast up almost every other day. So if you can't find us recapping a game after a day, click on the channel because you'll probably find another one. Like this will drop after tomorrow's game. And what do you know? We'll have another one on this channel the next day that will also talk about the Panthers game. So
yes,
everyone breathe, please.
Yeah, we got enough. There's enough content to go around.
It's a long season.
It is. Please, it's a long season. I agree with you. I know exactly what you're talking about. But so yeah, I mean, I the FanDuel comment was
well done.
It was awesome. But yeah, I mean, 8th is where I would have them. I just think, defensively, goaltending, that is your strength. That's why I'm not, we had a Halloween party Saturday night, Connor, and someone said, "Are you ready to trade Olmark?" And I said, "No, I'm not." Not there, because that's a strength of yours. And you gotta love when people have drinks with them and they start arguing Bruins takes. I'm like, all right, I argue Bruins takes enough. We don't have to do this here. But I'm not there on them being a cup contender yet. I know there are a lot of power rankings that have the Bruins like 3rd, top 5. And so far, I mean, they have been a top 5 team. They're the best team in the Atlantic, like by record and points. But I think cup contender, you have to look a little bit deeper than just kind of the first 8 games. But Connor, speaking of the first 8 games, 8 of 9 for Matt Poitras. We're into that sample, and Fluto Shinzawa had a long feature on Poitras last week and had some comments in there from Cam Neely about him, whether or not he should stay or go. And everything Montgomery has said has pointed to him staying. Everything that's been said, the way the team promotes him, feels like he's going to stay. I would be floored if he went back to Guelph. I mean, I would be freaking floored. And I think there'd be revolts. You have to admit, like there would be riots out in front of TD Garden if he were to go back. So I don't think that's going to be happening. But again, like it continues to impress, and teams are taking notice of him. I mean, you saw him get kind of hit from behind the other night. Montgomery mentioned on Monday that Frederick is now going to play with Matt Poitras to kind of be his bodyguard. You can't let everybody inside the club. It just feels like Poitras here to stay, man. Feels like that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, you even look at that game on Saturday against Detroit, where he has 0 points, but you talk to Jim Montgomery, you talk to his teammates after the game, you would think he had, a couple of primary assists with just the way he was playing. And again, that's a testament to how I think refined his game is right now. That even if maybe he didn't get a point on the score sheet, his ability to protect the puck, extend plays, a couple of plays where he's drawing guys out of position, setting up grade A chances. Like those are the things, we talked to McAvoy about that. Those are things you don't teach, right? A guy can be a very gifted offensive player and has a great shot and can land on the highlight reel every once in a while over this 9 games, or has a great 2-on-1 feed to set up a goal, but to do that night in and night out of shielding the puck, avoiding, putting yourself in bad spots, turning the puck over, having costly plays that hurt your team down the other end of the ice. That's impressive for a guy that age. I mean, he had I think it was the end of the second period against Detroit, pretty much like manufactured an extended offensive zone time by himself off of just protecting the puck. He had that one play on Thursday against the Ducks where draws two guys out of position, gets Cam Fowler, and I think it was Ryan Strome following him, feeds it back to McAvoy, leads to pretty much a wide open shot for one timer for Grizzly for a goal. Like, again, gets to the secondary assist on that, but even if it was another touch pass or something, like, he's the guy who sets those things up. Like, that's what he's already showing at this level. He's playing with a lot of confidence right now. So it's not only the fact that I think he's passed every test the Bruins have thrown his way. It's not the fact that he looks like an NHL player. Like, there's also the Bruins kind of need him. The guy is like, I think he's second on the team. The guy's second on the team, I think, right now in 5-on-5 scoring chances. Like, he's hanging around the net, he's making things happen, and as you're trying to find that cohesion and that chemistry in the forward core, he's a guy that plays into that and is one of the guys that's driving play for you right now. Again, we'll see how he is 40 games down the road, right? But for right now, as you're trying to kind of get your footing up front with your roster, having a guy like Poitras in place helps you out tremendously. And again, if he's up here full time and he's able to put a guy like Coyle further down the lineup, things just start falling into place a little bit more. So I think he's here to stay.
Oh, 100%. And we've talked a lot about his hockey sense, little things. We've talked about, his compete and his toughness, but like, he's such a good playmaker. Such a good playmaker. And that's why, like, like Grinnell mentioned on Thursday, like, keep him with a Marchand, let him kind of unlock the offense in a guy like a Marchand, or down the road, someone like a Pastrnak or a DeBrusk. And again, I get Frederick being next to him for that reason. Also, unlock offense in Trent Frederick, who's looked great through the first 8 games of the season, right? Like, I just think Poitras has that innate ability to be such a good playmaker, and that rubs off on his line mates, where Coyle is a puck possession guy who's a very good shutdown player, but just the points have never really been there, and that production has never really been there. And with Poitras, you get that. I'm not trying to demean Coyle. Like, Coyle has a real freaking role on this team. But again, Poitras's kind of just been sent to you, and you've got this guy there who looks like a top 6 center, plays like a top 6 center, and is a top 6 center. And at the very least, even if he's on that third line, it still feels like a second line because he's on it, or even a first line you could make the case for. So to me, I don't see any way in which he goes back. If he does go back, they would have to have I'd need like a 10-page essay with a thesis statement and like a full like AP English essay with facts to back it up, because I'd be curious to see those facts. But yeah, I think Poitras's going to be here to stay.
Yes.
Fanduel is the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. Fanduel, official partner of the NFL.
Danton Heinen made headlines. Danton Heinen made some big headlines on Monday when he led the practice skate, got stick taps from his teammates. The Bruins made him available after practice for talking to reporters. Still does not have a contract, and at the time of recording, this is 2:44 p.m. Unless it's happened while we've been recording, I haven't looked at my phone.
No.
There has not been any contract dished out. I know he was in the morning skate. He was on the 4th line with Beecher and Oscar Steen. What should they do with him? What is to be done? Because now Lucic is on LTIR, Lauko is hurt. Does Lucic on LTIR kind of open the door for Heinen to get a spot on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think there should be a spot for a guy like Heinen. I think he comes in handy. Obviously, right now, where you're shorthanded on the 4th line, I think having a guy like him can make a difference, right? Like, as much as I think there are very vocal Danton Heinen detractors, I think for what his versatility that he brings, his skill set, and the fact that whatever contract he does sign, if he signs here, is not going to be hefty, I don't think.
He's 8x8. He's gonna be 8x8. I'm telling you here.
Yeah. I think he brings a lot of value, especially if he ends up being like your 13th forward, or if he outplays a guy like Lauko, or a guy on the third line who's not pulling their weight. Like, it's good having a guy like that. It's the Bruins always talk about internal competition, and having a pretty established NHLer and Danton Heinen, who, I mean, I think surprised a lot of us that he didn't end up with a contract somewhere, considering what he did in Pittsburgh and what his floor is as an NHL player. There's value there, and if you're able to keep him on the team, either in a reserve role or a guy that can get pressed into a game when needed, it helps a team that already has some question marks up front. Having a guy like him in place can help you out a great deal. So again, maybe he signs at like 5:00 tonight or what have you, but it doesn't seem like there's some momentum there in terms of getting a deal done, because I think he can bring a lot of value to this team, whether it's in a reserve role or whenever they need to put him into a game. I think he can impact the game whenever you need him to.
You know what they should do? They should have done this today, because they might actually need him tonight, Monday night, against the Panthers. In college, when there'll be like a team meeting and there's like a hidden camera in the room, and the coach is talking, and he brings up the walk on, and says oh, Danton, like Monty would bring up Danton Heinen and say, Danton, we've got some news for you. And like Sweeney walks in with one of those fat like checks they give to like donate to people with 1 year, like, 850,000, and the place just goes nuts.
Publishers Clearinghouse. Yeah, just have the gigantic check.
Yeah, they should do it. Like surprise them with a contract. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think he brings something to the table that others don't. I think there's versatility in his game. I think there's even a route. We've talked about this. Feels like 5 of the top 6 are kind of set, but there's that one spot left. Is it Van Riemsdyk? Is it Frederick? Is it Geeky? Is it Coyle on the right? Is it, there's so many different options. Heinen's a guy that could play his way into that. Now, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you never know. He's in a good situation. Montgomery likes him a lot from his time with Denver. Like, I think there is an opportunity there. There's higher upside with a guy like Heinen than, some of your other guys in that bottom 6. Who knows? Maybe he doesn't work out. Maybe he never finds a spot. Who knows? But I just think there's that potential there. It's like when you add someone in fantasy football on like a bad team or something, and it's like, well, there's always that chance. There's always that chance that that so-and-so goes off. Adam Thielen goes off, and Adam Thielen's been awesome this season, savior for me. But as we say, we don't care about each other's fantasy football teams. It's not our thing. It's not our thing. I was saying to Patrick Donnelly yesterday, I was like, if you're writing about fantasy football, it must be awesome. You're just like, I think this week so-and-so is going to go off because they're going against this defense, and like it must be cool, and if you're wrong, it's like, what are you going to do? Must be cool.
I mean, as someone who started off 4-0, and I will not disclose what my record is now. I don't want to talk that much about fantasy football. It's almost like, Kevin, it's a big crapshoot. So
isn't it crazy? It's like March Madness, when you're filling out the bracket, and my mom would pick off jersey colors and do way better than me. So
of course, that's usually how it works.
It is. That is how that stuff works. Anyways, one last thing I want to hit on is Jim Montgomery too jumpy with his lines? Because it's been 8 games, a lot of different combinations of lines in that top 9. The 4th line obviously has to be different because Lauko and Lucic are both injured. So what are you gonna do? But a lot of flow through those top 9 lines. Now, you can also say, all right, Poitras in his 9-game stint, you want to see him in multiple places. But again, Zacha, Coyle kind of gaining chemistry with their line mates. Is he being too jumpy, or is this fine because, hey, it's the first couple of games, you're trying to figure things out?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said about sticking with a few groupings and trying to get some chemistry. It's like, I understand that nothing's really set in stone with this forward core. For years you had the luxury of Bergeron and Krejci, and you can kind of build your foundation around them. Now it's all up in the air, right? So it's all about trying to find where a guy's best fit. But you also got to let some of these lines marinate as well, right? Like I think we've looked at, like I won't say the one tonight or on Monday with Frederick with Poitras. Like I get why they're doing that, so I won't really hop on that. But that's one that if it was just, let's say it wasn't about like a thing of having, a bit of, protection for Poitras out there, right? Let's say like it was just Montgomery wanted to switch things up, then I'd be like, all right, well, what Frederick and Coyle can do together. Like let them marinate, right? Like you let them build some chemistry, whether it's Poitras with another group of guys or like getting DeBrusque going. And he's a guy that you need to start, delivering at 5-on-5 play. And I don't think it's really helping him that he's kind of jumbled all up and around the lineup as well. So, yeah, I understand that, it's still early in the season, but I do think that there's something to be said about letting some of these lines get some chemistry together, right? It'd be one thing that if this team was 3-4 or 2-6 like the Patriots or something like that, and you have a situation where, these lines aren't doing well and maybe not panicking, but you're not getting results out there. You have the luxury of having a very good goaltending grouping, a really strong defense that you can kind of have the luxury of letting these lines kind of sort themselves out, and barring, a line being out there and they're getting hemmed in and the shots are 8-0 for the opposition. Like, I think there's something to be said about keeping some of these lines intact and seeing what you have as opposed to continuing to kind of jumble them up. So we'll see. Maybe that changes once, we get more clarity with Heinen or Poitras and whether he's staying here or what have you. Like maybe that impacts the game a little bit. But until then, it does seem like a lot of that turnover, a lot of that switching in and out can lead to some issues for the Bruins in terms of trying to just get some cohesion, which is what I think they're kind of missing right now up front.
Yeah, and I think you'll see a little more, obviously, Monday night against the Panthers, Toronto, Detroit, Dallas, New York, Islanders are the next 5 games coming up. So again, you're going to be facing some lottery teams to some non-lottery teams. And I think you're going to get a little more clarity on that and what Montgomery has in store for all of those lines. But that is all for another day. Connor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to be covered throughout this interesting stretch here against Panthers, Maple Leafs, Detroit, again, Dallas. You got some actual impressive teams the Bruins very well could face in the spring up right now for the Bruins. So great test for them as we see how they handle those opponents. Roster turnover, all that stuff we have covered every step of the way over at Boston.com. So if you want to follow us, read all of our stuff over there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's been this week's Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Conor Ryan. You Bruins Beat listeners have a great rest of your week.